What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Early Edge presented by BetMGM. We're 35 days away from NFL kickoff, but only 23 from college football, and we've got an awesome college football preview for today, and we're going to feature some of our best at SportsLine. Let's go ahead and bring them in right now. We've got Mackenzie Brooks, we've got Chip Patterson, and we've got Mike McClure to preview the upcoming college football season. I'm super psyched. I mean, gentlemen, ladies, we have football tonight. We have NFL football tonight, kind of with the Hall of Fame game. But again, 23 days away from college football season. It's 3 weeks. So let's get right into it with an interesting play. How about an under the radar play to start things off to make the college football playoffs? Chip Patterson, I'm going to start with you. Where are we headed?
Oh, we're going to the Big Ten's newest member. It's in LA. Shout out to Deshaun Foster. And it's going to be Lincoln Riley and the USC Trojans to make the playoffs. Because we think about just 2 years ago, Caleb Williams playing tonight, of course. A hammy injury was the only thing that kept the Trojans away from the college football playoff. And they went and they've retooled this defensive staff. They bring in Danton Lynn from UCLA. They bring in Zach Entz, the former North Dakota State head coach, to be a linebackers coach. Doug Belk in the secondary. And this is what's very important because we're talking about an under the radar play. Everyone thinks it's going to be same old Lincoln Riley, same old defense. But speaking to Lincoln Riley at Big Ten Media Days, they're trying to change the mentality, and you need to be physical. You need to have the physicality to be able to compete in the Big Ten. I think USC's ceiling is as the fourth best team in the Big Ten. I think the Big Ten can get 4 teams into the college football playoff. And when it comes to offense, I mean, come on. It's Lincoln Riley, Miller Moss, Jaden Maeva. It doesn't even matter. You know they're going to be able to put up points. So I like the value here on the Trojans as a little bit of an under-the-radar play to make the playoff.
Yeah, defense usually the issue with Lincoln Riley teams. Mike, I'm going to go to you. I want everybody to know we're going to not only talk about under the radar, we're of course going to get into our main picks, but we're also going to be talking like Heisman Trophy, non-Power 4 conference picks. We've got a full hour lined up with you to talk really every angle of college football futures. Mike, we're talking about, anytime we talk about college football these days, college basketball too, it's always transfer portal talk, new players on new teams. Well, the Miami Hurricanes have a lot of new players, but one in particular that has you maybe on them as an under the radar playoff pick?
Yes, yeah, under the radar, it's always difficult to know like what is our threshold here in terms of price point to
Right.
be considered under the radar. For me at 210, I think it's under the radar because they're favored in every single game this season. They're one of the few teams in college football that is a favorite on the lines that you can look ahead and bet right now. They are favored in every single game. And the reason for that is the schedule. They talk about the ACC. They don't play Clemson. They do play Florida State, but they get that game at home. This Miami team, while it's going to look a lot different than it did last year with all the transfers, I think they have the best quarterback running back combo in the ACC with Cam Ward and Damian Martinez, but they also did a lot of work on the defensive side of the ball in the transfer portal. The schedule sets up soft as long as they don't get tripped up week 1 at Florida. I think this team is on the way, and you don't even necessarily have to go undefeated here. They lose one game to Florida State, they're absolutely getting in this expanded playoff. Give me Miami here plus 210. I have the number at 40%, which says plus 150. Pretty strong value here.
Yeah, living in South Florida for a majority of the last 20 years, I can tell you that expectations are usually high for Miami, and they never really get there. But I got to say, this seems like a year where they have the right things in place. Let's see what Cristobal can pull off. But I do love Cam Ward. All right, Mackenzie Brooks, who do you love as an under the radar playoff pick?
We're going really under the radar here, a little bit off the board. Boise State, I think we get one little guy to make it here to the playoffs, a little bit of a process of elimination. I think Liberty could be that team, but when it comes to strength of schedule, Boise State has the edge there. They're solid favorites when you look at their schedule. In 11 of 12 games in our Sims, we have them as favorites. So Oregon really being the outside team there. But again, ton of returning production, ton of returning production. They fired their head coach, which we understand, but they promoted within. So it's not like there's too much change going on. I think if we're looking at the outside looking in guys, they're a strong contender and they'd have the edge over Liberty.
All right, I like the Boise State pick, like the schedule here as well. All right, we just talked about an under the radar playoff pick. Let's switch gears and talk about the college football winner, the playoff winner. Chip, I'm going to start with you again. We're going to have some powerhouse names here, and you're going to start with.
Who's that coming down the track? Listen, I got to tell you, I want nothing to do with standing in the way of what's that, Kens? Can you finish that for me?
It's a meme machine in red and black.
That's right. I'm talking chip on the shoulder. I'm talking revenge tour. You keep the Georgia Bulldogs out of the college football playoff invitational when we all know that they could have gone and put a number on almost anybody in that little invitational, and you give them the opportunity to maybe finally have some adversity. I mean, Kirby Smart made up reports of projections of 7-5 and 6-6, like just to be able to give them a little bit of an edge. I think specifically Carson Beck is the big thing that gives me confidence here. When we talk about quarterbacks coming back next year, we're talking about somebody who among returning passers was 4th nationally in passer rating, 3rd nationally in completion percentage, and tied for 3rd nationally in yards per attempt. We got so used to seeing a 7th-year former walk-on drive the Cadillac, we forgot what happens when a real race car driver takes the wheel. I think Carson Beck's going to have a phenomenal season. And when you think about adding games to the playoff, you are not adding the opportunity for the little guy to win. You are only making it easier for the Georgias, the Ohio States, the Alabamas, the Michigans. You are making it easier for them to win. So I think that Georgia, in the first year of the 12-teamer, they get back to the top of the mountain.
Making it easier for them to win. There was one name reference there, Mike McClure, that you like to win the college football championship, the playoff. Who is it?
It's Ohio State. But I think Georgia and Ohio State are clearly in a class of their own. It is these two, and then there is a next tier in college football. And when you look at what Chip said, it really helps these two at the top, having the expanded format. You simply don't have to be perfect. You obviously have to win at the right time still, no matter what, but you don't have to be perfect. And when you look at the odds here, Ohio State has the best odds to simply get to the college football playoff. It is hard to see a scenario where this team is not in the college football playoff. Likely, as long as they avoid Georgia in one of those first games, I think this is a spot where they're basically walking their way to the title game, likely against Georgia here. I think they're the best team on both sides of the ball. So I like this year for Ohio State.
All right, Ohio State, that conference. We'll talk about the conference champion there, along with all the Power 4 schools and some non-Power 4 conference champions as well. Mackenzie Brooks, I couldn't help but notice that you were finishing Chip Patterson's sentences, which was amazing, by the way. Does that also mean that maybe you share his opinion on the Dogs?
Yes, I do. And I have my football right behind me, the Natty Championship football. Look, I'm here to speak for the data, okay? Yes. And the data says that the Georgia Bulldogs are winning this national championship. We give them the highest percent chance, not the best value play, but it is our highest percent, around 30%. Just to address Ohio State quick, and I'll talk about it later in the show, we are really high on Penn State, which could possibly make this Ohio State playoff run look a little uglier than what could be for Georgia. We talked about returning production. We talked about Carson Beck, 68% returning production, which doesn't seem that high. They're typically sending all of their players to the Philadelphia Eagles, which I also love, but that's big for them. That's the most since 2020. So to have that playoff experience, to have that type of team going into a long playoff run, you two both mentioned it. Again, this type of playoff really is an advantage to these big powerhouses. Georgia knows how to play in these big games. If someone beats them early, I'll be damned if they don't beat them again the second time around. So I think this certainly helps their chances as well.
Yeah, Georgia seems like a good pick there. Listen, you all know a lot more than I do in these college football streets. I will just give a shout out to Oregon. I was actually hanging out with a former player at Oregon just this last weekend, and vibes are high. He's pretty objective, and I can tell you he's pretty objective, and vibes are high. He's very excited for Dillon Gabriel and company, Lanning and company. I think it's going to be that they're going to be, I think I'm Captain Obvious here. They're going to be involved in these discussions for sure. So that's going to be my pick at plus 800. Nobody should listen to me. Listen to the other three. Let's talk about a long shot future, though. A long shot potential playoff winner. Chip, I start with you again.
Yeah, this is maybe a little tag team. If you were also interested in maybe the Heisman market, which I know we'll discuss a little bit later on, lots of different ways to attack this. But if you believe that Jackson Arnold, the second-year quarterback for Oklahoma, is going to be the truth, then I think there could be some real opportunity. Oklahoma went into the transfer portal. They got one of the best wide receivers around, a guy named Deion Burks, who lit it up at Purdue, who I think is going to have a tremendous year, one of the best wideouts in the country. Offensive line is always good, and the defense here as we prepare for year 3 under Brent Venables maybe is one of the best that they've had. And just to put a button on this with Jackson Arnold, they believe so much in Jackson Arnold that they let Dylan Gabriel, who you just mentioned, walk right out that door to go be at Oregon, and Oregon's thrilled to have him. That's how much Oklahoma believes in Jackson Arnold. And so if that's going to click for the Sooners, then I think it's going to be the best offense that they've had since Brent Venables arrived. And that means that this could be a very, very dangerous team. They're slept on and they're priced low because they're having to make that jump from the Big 12 to the SEC. But when we're looking at long shots, high, big-time variance, I think the ceiling of Jackson Arnold could be pretty high.
Mike, Chip Patterson mentioned, of course, the Heisman Trophy, which we'll talk about later on in the show. But there's a certain Heisman Trophy candidate that's getting a lot of buzz, got a lot of buzz from you a couple of months ago on our show on the Early Edge. You like his team to potentially be a long shot winner. Talk to us about it.
Yeah, like Chip mentioned, when you're looking at a long shot, there's probably going to be some correlation with a long shot Heisman candidate in your play as well. For me, it's Kansas State, another team that I have favored in every single game this season, just like Miami. It's the soft schedule. It's the roster here. You know, just like Oklahoma, you had a quarterback that went to another contender. Same situation here. Will Howard from Kansas State transferred to Ohio State. Will Howard didn't necessarily want to leave. He didn't have a job at Kansas State anymore because of Avery Johnson. Avery Johnson, an absolute freak athletically. He's going to be a dual threat quarterback, running up the score, frankly, on some of these opponents. And he's got DJ Giddens and Dylan Edwards to transfer in the backfield with him. A great offensive line, but it's the schedule you have to talk about, Sia. The new look Big 12, Texas and Oklahoma are gone. The newcomer that's good, Utah, they don't play them. When you look at the other potential trip up spots here, Arizona got depleted because of the coaching change in Washington. And then the final 2 matchups, KU, Kansas, they have a great electric quarterback. Problem is they have to go to Manhattan. Oklahoma State also has to go to Manhattan. I think Kansas State gets in as a 1-loss team if they drop a game here, but I think they're getting in the college football playoff. This number plus 8,000 implies 1.2%. If they're in, they're going to be a lot better shot than 1.2%.
Fair enough. That's a long number. Mackenzie Brooks, are we going that long? Where are we at with our long shot college football winner?
We're going pretty long shot as well. I do like Kansas State a lot, like Mike, but we're going to go to Missouri here, okay? Potential to make it out of the SEC, potential to win the SEC at a long shot. And this goes a little bit with my long shot Heisman player as well. An awesome wide receiver that we could see having a major successful season here. Look, this is about their schedule. This is a soft schedule relative to the rest of the SEC. And they return 80% of their production. You really like to see that when you're looking for a deep playoff run here. So solid shot to win 10 games. Again, maybe even win the SEC. You look at their schedule, they don't even play 3 of the 4 best teams. There's no Georgia, there's no Texas, there's no Tennessee, and they killed Tennessee before. So I think if they can get on a strong foot, a really early strong record, we can see them maybe make a solid playoff run here.
Returning 80% of their production is certainly music to my ears. If you want these bets, or if you want futures or bets throughout the college football season from Chip Patterson, Mike McClure, Mackenzie Brooks, or just the wide range of personalities and cappers at SportsLine, it's super easy. Go to sportsline.com/join, and you can become a member of SportsLine. You type in the promo code winners, and you'll get 60% off the annual plan. Again, that's 60% off the annual plan. All you got to do is scan that QR code right there on your TV, or head to sportsline.com/join and type in the promo code winners. Everything from picks to articles to simulations, DFS plays. Literally, SportsLine has it all from a betting and capping standpoint. All right, well, we mentioned the SEC. We mentioned the Big Ten. We mentioned all these Power 4 conferences. Well, now we got to get to our Power 4 conference winners, and we're going to do that after the break right here on The Early Edge. We are back on The Early Edge, presented by BetMGM. We've talked a lot already, but we have so far to go. And Chip, Mike, Mackenzie, I want to start with Power Four conference championship picks. And let's talk about a team that's already been in the discussion, the Big Ten. Do I still call it the Big Ten? With all this realignment, I'm not sure what we call anything at this point. But Chip, I start with you. Who's the Big Ten winner?
Well, first of all, of course, we call it the Big Ten. We call it whatever they want because at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time on CBS, America's most watched network, the network of stars, you'll be hearing that before we watch the Big Ten in living rooms across America. They want to call it the Big Ten. We call it the Big Ten. And Ohio State's going to win the Big Ten because Ohio State's got a football team playing on Saturdays where about half the team really should be playing on Sundays. I'm talking about Tyleik Williams, JTT. They're talking about players like Denzel Burke, Travion Henderson, players that are seniors, Emeka Buka, that could have been NFL draft picks this past April, but decided to come back. Will Howard arrives from Kansas State. Quinshon Judkins, former SEC Rookie of the Year, he arrives from Ole Miss. This is an Ohio State team that has aggressively gone all in, and that's even before I get to the fact that Chip Kelly left a job as a head coach in the Big Ten to come be an offensive coordinator for this team of Buckeyes that frankly are the rock stars of college football. I just think, will they lose along the way? Yeah, I could see them losing at Oregon. That is going to be an incredible environment in Eugene. But you get to Lucas Oil Stadium at the end of the year, I don't see anybody beating the Buckeyes, so I've got Ohio State.
Yeah, that Oregon-Ohio State game is going to be really, really interesting. Can't wait for that one. And I'll say, when you said JTT, I thought Jonathan Taylor Thomas, a bit of a dated reference, but that's what I thought. I wanted to share. Mike McClure, do you agree? Is it Ohio State's conference?
It is Ohio State's conference. Look, the conference is loaded from top to bottom. There are a number of teams that could win this. There's going to be a ton of exciting games, but this team is built to finally win here. And when I say finally win this title, get to the national title game, or at least be a deep playoff run. And it's really both sides of the ball. We can talk all day about the offense. They are absolutely loaded offensively. They've actually got depth. Even if they run into situations with injuries, they've got a ton of depth. But I think they're going to take steps forward, continue to take those steps forward on the defensive side of the ball. And then you mentioned the Big 12 title game in the location, or the Big 10 title game in the location. You give this team, this offense, a dome, a controlled environment to go work in that kind of a situation. I think it's absolutely critical for them. And I do clearly think they are the best team in this conference.
Mackenzie, just a few minutes ago, you mentioned Penn State possibly sneaking into the college football playoff. Can they sneak to the top of the Big Ten?
Yeah, I'm here to stir the pot a little bit. And I grew up in Happy Valley Nation where I came from, and I understand the disappointment that this team can bring, but I do think if there is a time, it is now, and that is because their strength of schedule is so easy. The model has them with a 75% chance of winning 10 plus games. Now you look at Aller, who was a freshman. A lot of his hiccups were in these really big moments. Again, he has a year under his belt. I don't think he gets worse than that, and they don't even have Michigan on their schedule this year, So it just doesn't seem like it could go that bad. Now, I understand Ohio State is great. This is really just a play on Penn State's schedule. We give them over a 50% chance just under a 50% chance to take this division or conference. If it is going to happen, I do think it is this year.
Wow. Well, if that's what the model says and you're getting plus 500, I certainly like what I'm hearing there, Mackenzie Brooks. All right, let's transition to the Big 12. Chip, listen, I've done a little bit of homework in these college football circles a little bit. And there's a certain team that has a certain running back and a certain veteran offensive line that intrigues me to win the Big 12. I'm speaking in code, but you'll clarify.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just seniors in college football. The COVID year is about to cycle out. But remember, it was super seniors, 5th and 6th year players that helped power Washington's run all the way to the national title game. And I don't know if this team's going to make it to the national title game, but that's the kind of experience that we have in Stillwater at Oklahoma State. This offensive line has played a ton of snaps, and they played a ton of snaps together as a group. Last year, we saw them pave the way for Ollie Gordon to be one of the best running backs in the entire country. And now all of a sudden, we go into a season where Oklahoma State, I think, is mispriced, because I think Oklahoma State is closer to Utah and Kansas State than they are to Kansas and UCF. This is a Cowboys team that, in addition to that offensive line and their star running back, They've got a seventh-year quarterback in Alan Bowman. They've got a defense that's loaded up with experience. And Mike Gundy has taken less talented teams to the Big 12 title game as recently as just last year. And so I think what they're going to be able to do, even as the schedule is going to be a little bit more difficult than it was a year ago, they've built up that kind of continuity, that year-over-year momentum, where they're going to be able to be a real threat to make it to that Big 12 title game. And especially at that price, I like being able to push them one step further, winning the whole daggum thing.
Let me boldface, especially at that price, because I love this price of plus 800. And Mike McClure, I think, to me, I think it's Oklahoma State, it's Utah, or it's Kansas State. You like one of those three I just mentioned.
Yeah, it's very clearly a three-horse race here, in my opinion. And I would agree that Oklahoma State should be a little closer to where Kansas State and Utah are. I think Kansas State should be the favorite, though. Just looking up and down the schedule, again, legitimate Heisman candidate on the roster here playing quarterback, but the schedule is just so great. See Arizona at home, Oklahoma State at home, Kansas at home, just all of these friendly spots here. I think that Kansas State is going to be a very, very strong team. I think they could go undefeated in this regular season here, but you also have to consider the fact that the location of some of these games, and when you get to the title game, going to be held in Dallas, Texas, very short travel situation for Wildcat fans. There's a huge Wildcat base in North Texas as well. It would play closer to a home game unless it was against Oklahoma State. It would be pretty even at that point, but any other matchup, it's a Kansas State home game in that particular final. Love the price point here, plus 400.
All right, Mackenzie Brooks, is it 2 out of 3 for Avery Johnson and company?
It is. I love Kansas State here. Again, we do give this team in the model a 50% chance to take this conference. Again, the schedule, they don't even play Utah. And then you look at the preseason poll, 3, 4, and 5, they have at home. And we absolutely love this team at home. We love their metrics at home. That's a lot of what is driving this. But you even just look at those, if you go back to that schedule, I mean, they have an FCS team, 2 teams with 2 new head coaches, and a down BYU just in the first 4 weeks. This could be a really, really strong start for this team. A ton of momentum going into the second half when they get these big teams at home. I'm with Mike. I don't know why this isn't, a shorter line, honestly.
Yeah, that schedule looks pretty soft to me. I mean, certainly there's some teams in there, but probably doesn't compare to some of the other schedules in the Big 12. Let's move to the ACC. This one intrigues me a lot because I do think this is a little bit more wide open of a conference than you might find in some other places. Chip, let's start with you. Who's winning the ACC?
Yeah, we had the CBS Sports 134 release today on CBSSports.com. 0 ACC teams in the top 12. 3 occupying spaces 13 to 16. So there's very clearly a tier where they're all going to be battling with each other. And the one that I think is going to come out on top in Charlotte in early December is going to be the Clemson Tigers. I think that this is a moment where we go back to Tyler in Spartanburg, who decided that he was going to call up Dabo Sweeney and taunt him with some proverbs, and he got some Old Testament fire and brimstone in return. Tigers ain't lost since Tyler and Spartanburg called into the radio show. And I think that this group is going to be so much better at wide receiver. I think quarterback Cade Klubnik is going to be even better as he goes into year 2 with coordinator Garrett Riley. And that has been the problem because this Clemson defense has been loaded up with NFL talent and is loaded up with NFL talent once again. I think the Tigers have the best defense in the ACC. And if we just need only marginal steps forward to be able to get Clemson over the hump, well, then I think, we're going to be able to get that. So I like Clemson to be able to reclaim their spot atop the ACC here in 2024.
This one's interesting because we've got 3 different answers for the ACC. Mike, I like your answer at plus 440. Like the number on this team. Tell us about it.
It's the Miami Hurricanes, Sia, but you're right. We've got 3 different answers here. There are only 3 contenders in this division, in this conference, in my opinion. It's clearly the 3 teams we're talking about here. The difference for me with Miami is the schedule. As you saw with Clemson, I like Clemson. I think 2 of the 3 we're talking about here are going to make the college football playoff, but they don't have to play Clemson here. They do play Florida State, but it's much later in the season where they've got time to really get all of this group, this big transfer portal class working well together, and they get the game at home. So for me, if they get by Florida week 1, I think that they're going to cruise all the way to that Louisville, Florida State little section of the schedule. To me, this Miami team is just loaded offensively and defensively. Again, Cam Ward, Damian Martinez, I truly believe are the best running back quarterback combo in the ACC. But I really think it's about the defensive side of the ball. I think they're going to be very legit there. So I like Miami at this price point. I think it should be around plus 310 based off my sim number.
Yeah, they've got some receivers that can play too. Kens, let's go to another Florida team to win the ACC.
Yeah, I know it's a lame play here, but I do like Florida State. The model likes Florida State. It feels like there's really no excuse for them to not win at least 10 games, even with a few surprise losses. You look at their schedule, they have Clemson, but they have Clemson at home and they have Florida at home, which they're both favored in. So I like that for them. And it's honestly just a fade of Clemson. No offense, Chip. The model is not high on Clemson and that schedule that they have that they're looking at. We like SMU more than most. So it really becomes the other teams kind of beating up on each other and Florida State being the one to come out with at least 10 wins, definitely.
All right, Florida State, Miami, and Florida. Absolutely love to see it. Or excuse me, Clemson. Absolutely love to see it. That's kind of a Power 3 preview. Coming up next, we got to get to that Power 4 part. We got to see who these three like to win the SEC. And we've got some non-Power 4 conference winners to give you as well. Stay tuned. Much more to come on the Early Edge. We are back on the Early Edge presented by BetMGM. We've covered a few of the Power 4, but we got to get to the fourth. Let's talk SEC, and then let's talk some non-Power 4 conference predictions. Chip, I'm going to start with you. Who is the SEC winner?
Yeah, I've got the Georgia Bulldogs winning the national title, and they're not coming in as an at-large. They're coming in with an automatic bid because they've won the Southeastern Conference. This is a spot where I do think they'll take a loss along the way, but the one that I've got circled is right there at Texas, where they might have an opportunity to get revenge for that loss. So complete on both sides of the ball, and Carson Beck's my big X factor. So yeah, I've got the Dogs after coming just like one play short, being able to get the SEC title once again.
All right. Do we have a second vote for Georgia, Mike McClure? Or are we going another direction?
Another direction here, Sia. I'm looking at the Texas Longhorns, the newcomer here. When you look at the Texas Longhorns schedule, this is about as soft a schedule as you could get in the SEC. Yes, they play Georgia, but where's Ole Miss? Where's Tennessee? Where's Alabama? I don't see them on the schedule here. Yes, they play Michigan early, but I think Michigan takes a big step back. The question mark here is going to be that final game on the road at Texas A&M. But I think this Texas team, they could easily drop the game to Georgia in the regular season here. I think they're poised for a big, big year. I like the price point here, thanks to how strong Georgia is.
Mackenzie, I couldn't see if you were smiling ear to ear when Chip Patterson chose Georgia, but I assume you were. Is that also your pick?
Yes, it is music to my ears, and the model loves them. They give them the highest percent chance, but I don't want to just sit here and echo. Chip, if you want a better bang for your buck, two other teams I'm looking at. Tennessee, a really great soft schedule as well. Even the top three teams they play, Oklahoma, we have them favored against. They have Bama at home, who they almost beat, and then you have Georgia. So if you really come out of that with just losing to Georgia, the rest of their schedule is bottom half of the league. And you're looking at a true freshman quarterback who at one point scored 35 points against Iowa. So just want to put that out there as well. But again, if you maybe bet on them and you bet on Missouri also to win, you can come out of that and maybe hedge against Georgia in the SEC championship. So just a different way to look at it here.
Very interesting. Okay, Georgia at plus 185, but Tennessee at plus 1,800. All right, that covers the Power 4, Chip, Mike, and Kens. Let's go to the best of the rest. Favorite non-Power 4 conference winner, Chip. Well, listen, this whole committee here has been relatively in sync. A lot of playing off each other, which is great because we don't see our picks ahead of time. We just come to the show and here we are. But I could have sworn that Boise State was mentioned earlier in the show by one Mackenzie Brooks. And you like them to win the Mountain West. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, and I do like that pick because, the idea that Boise State's going to be able to make the playoffs suggests that they are the highest rated group of 5 team. And I think the Mountain West is going to be rated as the best of the group of 5 conferences this year. And I think that Boise State is maybe about a 4 to 7 point favorite against almost everybody else in that conference. That they returned so much from last year. We already discussed the coaching change and the way they rallied around Spencer Danielson. I think they have really leveled things off. And then Ashton Jeanty, their running back, is going to be up there in that conversation for the Doak Walker Award, handed to the best running back in the country. So when I've got Boise State so much further ahead of the competition than what, say, App State will have in the Sun Belt, than, say, what you might find in the American or the MAC, I just really like the opportunity there to jump on the Broncos.
All right, now we move to the AAC. Mike McClure, we are walking in Memphis, correct?
We are. Look, it's either going to be Boise State or Memphis for me as the long shot that sneaks into the college football playoff in that group of 5. I like Memphis here. I think they're being disrespected a bit, and some of it is related to Tulane. Tulane has been great in this conference for a while, but Mr. Pratt is no longer there to really run that show for them. But when I look at Memphis, it's really the trajectory of the program overall. So in the days of NIL, we know what's in Memphis. That would be FedEx. They've committed a ton of money to the NIL fund there at Memphis. They're renovating the stadium. They just brought in 10 transfers on the defensive side of the ball. But Seth Hennigan and Combo, one of the oldest, actually, I think he's the only 4-year starter at the same program in college football this year at the quarterback position. I love the receivers that he's got here. This team is going to put up points. I think they're live to hang with Florida State in that early season game. Outside of that game, I think they run the table here. So I love Memphis plus 210.
Can I just tell everybody my adrenaline is like raising every single break and segment we go to? Like, I'm so excited. Again, 23 days away from college football kickoff. Mackenzie Brooks, what do we have to win the MAC?
Yes, we're going to the MACtion boys. We are going with Toledo here, okay? We give them a 33% chance to take this conference, just a 22% chance for Miami of Ohio. And I know I sound like a broken record, but it's this favorable schedule. Northern Illinois is the only top half team that they don't play at home, okay? They don't even play Western Michigan at all. And basically any of the teams are in contention to win this MAC. 3 of them they get at home. So again, just a favorable schedule, 33% in the Sims plus 320 is pretty solid value for that.
I see some of these teams, and I recall that we get Tuesday night football, we get Wednesday night football, and the NFL gives us Monday and Thursday, and then of course we have Sunday and Saturday. There's just really no days off. And NFL even giving us Friday to start the season off in Brazil. It's all football. It's all the time. It's all on SportsLine. Ladies and gentlemen, coming up next, we got to go Heisman Trophy hunting. We've got Heisman Trophy winners and Heisman Trophy long shots coming up next on the Early Edge. We're back on the Early Edge presented by BetMGM, and it's time to talk Heisman. Jaden Daniels winning last year. He goes to my Washington Commanders. Well, he's got to see who's going to be the next guy. Chip, we're going to start with you. Who's winning the Heisman this year?
I've got the same young man who finished 6th in last year's Heisman Trophy voting, because after running all over the place on 4th and 31 and throwing that game winner in the Iron Bowl, then going on to win the SEC championship, Jalen Milroe absolutely rocketed into the national consciousness. And so if there were 45 voters who put him 3rd, 8 voters who put him 2nd, and 4 voters who put him 1st place on their ballot 1 year ago, well, then I do think there is going to be a good portion of the Heisman electorate that it's going to be easy to gravitate back towards him if he has a successful season, which I think he will have under the tutelage of Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer did so much for Michael Penix's career. He does such a good job of being able to coach up the offense around a quarterback. I just think that this is a great improvement. You hate to say goodbye to the GOAT Nick Saban, but personally, I think Jalen Milroe knows his offensive ceiling might be even higher with Kalen DeBoer.
Fair enough. Mike McClure, there's a guy over at Ole Miss who does a pretty good job with quarterbacks as well. Who's your Heisman Trophy winner?
I'm going Jackson Dart here, Ole Miss. Look, Ole Miss has never produced a Heisman winner. They've really never finished better than 3rd, but I think this could be the year. And we keep talking about schedule. You're going to hear it a lot. Both Kins and I have really harped on schedule. You have to, because of all of the expansion across college football. The schedule is uneven for a lot of teams. When I look at the Ole Miss schedule, they have a very favorable path. They also have a couple of massive shootouts on the schedule, meaning LSU and Oklahoma. Those games are going to be first to 50 wins. They're going to put up a ton of stats. I think they've got one of the best wide receiver rooms in the country, not to mention you still get credit for being in the SEC here. Even if you don't have to play all the top teams, you still get credit for the conference that you're in. And I think this team got better on the defensive side of the ball. I think it's going to put them in favorable spots to pick up scoring opportunities even easier than before. I love Jackson Dart here, who has moved from plus 2,000 to plus 1,200 in the last month.
All right. Well, Mackenzie Brooks, it sounds to me, or I should say, it sounds to everybody else in a few seconds. It looks to me like you like, and the SportsLine model likes one. Is it Chip's pick again? Is it Chip's on fire? If the SportsLine model has his pick again, talk to us about it.
This might be one of my favorite future plays yet. Jalen Milroe, again, to win the Heisman. These odds act like he's not even a legit contender to win. He's tied with a bunch of other guys here. This is someone who people literally voted for him to be the Heisman last year. He's the highest ranked returning quarterback of this entire group. This is how we got to Jaden Daniels winning the Heisman last year. It's about exceeding your expectations. Caleb Williams' expectations were so high, there was no room to exceed them. Same with some of these guys at the top of the list. Jalen Milroe's win total is around 8.5. These other guys are around 9.5, 10.5, some of them. So it's easier for to exceed. And the bar is so low for him, respectfully. He couldn't make the layups, he couldn't make the floaters, but he can make all of these massively impressive plays. And I'm willing to bet on the fact that he maybe won't throw the ball at his feet again this season. And we can see him exceed the expectations. We talked about Washington again. He has Washington center, Washington's head coach, who made a guy with 2 torn ACLs look like a top 10 NFL draft pick. So I'm hoping maybe they can do something like that with him.
That was amazing. I love the psychological component you just incorporated there with voters and exceeding expectations. And it's actually a really great transition to maybe some long shot plays for the Heisman Trophy winner. Listen, we know these 3 picks you guys just dished out are solid picks, but we also know the Heisman Trophy can emerge from far back. So let's talk, Chip, about a long shot to win that Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Oklahoma quarterback Jackson Arnold. I saw his floor and his ceiling in that bowl game. You know, whether it's Nico Iamaleava at Tennessee, whether it's Jackson Arnold at Oklahoma, Miller Moss at USC. We've got all these new starters around the country who were just hanging on to the bowl game, and you saw some bad. He was holding on to the ball too long. He was turning it over. But then later on in the game, once he got comfortable, came storming back, and you got to see all of the talent, which is why Oklahoma was willing to say goodbye to Dillon Gabriel, who right now is one of the top names on the Heisman odds board. So this is an investment in Oklahoma's offensive brain trust. If they believe this much in Jackson Arnold over Dillon Gabriel, well, then I'll take it as well, especially at that price.
Now, Mike, we move to you, and I want to preface your pick by saying that, of course, you're on these CBS Sports Network shows with us, and it's always fantastic. But people should know, if they don't already, you're also on the early edge at 10 in the morning on the SportsLine YouTube channel a lot too. And I seem to recall a couple of months ago you giving out an Avery Johnson pick at really long odds. Now, there's still long odds, and it looks like that's your pick. But if you could explain to us what we heard a couple of months ago on Avery Johnson in terms of his number and what his number is now and your pick.
So clear back in January, gave him at 70-1 on the look ahead, 50-1 a few months after that. Still like it at 25-1. I think he should be right around 15 entering preseason, but I think he's going to be in the top 5 by midseason. So what I'm looking for on the schedule is if they get through the Colorado game on the road undefeated, he's going to be a serious Heisman candidate at that particular point. So our friends at 24/7 have this freaks list that they put out every year. They put it out last year. He was the only quarterback there. They use a Spark score where they test overall athleticism. He outscored guys like Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson at the same point in their careers. I think that the schedule is so friendly. As Chip and I mentioned, it makes it easier for the top teams to win the actual national title, but it actually makes it easier for everyone else to come in and win a Heisman Trophy now, because just getting to the college football playoff for a team like this would likely be enough unless you're talking about truly historic stuff from someone else. So I love the value on Avery Johnson here. Again, should be 1,500, still a lot of value left at 2,500.
Yeah, 70-1 to 50-1 to around 25-1. You could have gotten the 70-1, and most of you did if you were watching the early edge in January, folks. All right, Mackenzie Brooks, where are we going with our long shot Heisman Trophy winner?
We're certainly going with the long shot here. We're going to go to Missouri wide receiver Luther Burden here. Look, this wide receiver group is far less competitive than the one that we saw last year. There is a good chance that Burden can find himself being the best wide receiver in college football. I talked about them earlier. One of the easiest SEC schedules, tons of returning production for them. I think we could see a lot of these quarterbacks start to beat up on each other, and maybe this is the year that a wide receiver is far ahead of the rest, and we can get Burden here.
All right, Luther Burden, a wide receiver to crack the code and eclipse some quarterbacks. It's happened before, and let's see if it happens again. All right, speaking of long shots, we've got our college football long shot wagers to cap this show. We're really going long here to win the college football championship and maybe a long shot to win the Big Ten. These are long odds, folks. You won't want to miss it. It's right here on the Early Edge. Welcome back to the Early Edge presented by BetMGM, and it's been an incredible show with incredible picks, but we're going long here, Chip, Mackenzie, and Mike. We're going super long with some, let's say, plus 5,000 or longer college football futures. Chip, I start with you. You've got a team to win the Big Ten at very long odds.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, just because Matt Rule says there's going to be 4 teams that make the college football playoff every year doesn't mean there's going to be 4 teams that make the college football playoff every year. But I do think that Nebraska is set for a big jump forward here with another year of Matt Rule, because while we look at that team and we think about them being 5-7, what we don't think about is that they had the 7th best defense in the country in terms of yards per play allowed. Absolutely phenomenal. Their defensive coordinator, Tony White, courted for other jobs. They kept him locked down. They got 5-star quarterback Dylan Raiola, and that should solve one of their biggest problems, which was interceptions and turnovers. Nebraska's whoopsie-daisy rate was through the roof. I think Raiola fixes that and raises their ceiling, so I like Nebraska to win the Big Ten at a big number.
Mackenzie, do you have something to add there?
We also have to remember that their quarterback is essentially Patrick Mahomes, if no one else has found that out on the internet. So that's also huge for them, and the clout points. It has to be mentioned.
Crafty move by Nebraska. All right, Mike, we've got maybe some hope in South Florida. Talk to us about it.
Yeah, it's got to be Miami here to win the college football playoff. Yes, it is unlikely. It's plus 6,000 the price point, but this team is literally favored in every single one of their games. They slip up and lose 2. They're probably still sneaking in the college football playoff. They lose once to Florida State. They're definitely in the college football playoff. And when you talk about this team, I think they've got one of the better quarterbacks in college football. They definitely have one of the better running backs that can go pick up a first down in a playoff game in Damian Martinez. And that defense, I think that the longer this team gets to work together, again, they don't play Florida State till the second half of the schedule. If they get through that first half unscathed, they're going to be in this college football playoff. And if they are, they're certainly going to be live to win it all.
All right, we've heard about Miami from Mike and earlier on this show. We heard about Kansas State and specifically Avery Johnson earlier on this show, and we wanted to catch that 70-1 in January that Mike gave out, but we can catch them at a similar, if not the same number to win it all. So why don't we do that, Mackenzie Brooks?
Yeah, let's do it. Look, we've already talked about Kansas State all show. You'd think we're donors to the program or something at this point. But looking at the value here, you look at the odds makers, put them around a 1.4% chance to win. The SportsLine model puts them at a 3.7. Okay, so that's a big deal here. Again, they set themselves up nicely. I think they can win their conference here, 5th easiest schedule in the Big 12, and they have a ton of returning production. I think that could take them there, potentially.
All right. So we like Avery Johnson and company at Kansas State, Miami to win it all at 70-1. Both of those are at 70-1, 60-1 with Nebraska to win the Big Ten. A lot of picks. Go back and watch this show. Hopefully you got it recorded because we got a lot of fun facts peppered in with the picks, and we always do that very thing on the Early Edge every single morning at 10 o'clock and at sportsline.com. You are not going to want to miss all of the content we have. And let's see those smiles. Mike, I got to see you smile too, because we got 23 days until college football, and we're covering it at Sportsline. We're covering it at CBS Sports Network, and we're covering it on the Early Edge. Don't forget to go to sportsline.com/join. Type in the promo code WINNERS. You get 60% off the annual plan. A great college football preview, folks. We'll see you on the next one on the Early Edge.